Have you ever opened Windows File Explorer and saw multiple drives installed? But then you say to yourself, wait a minute, I've only got one drive in this computer. Sometimes it's just a DVD drive, but sometimes that drive is actually split into multiple pieces, and those pieces are called partitions. Today we're going to explain the difference between drives and partitions, and why you may or may not want to use them. Because if you don't know the difference, you could potentially delete your data or cause Windows not to work. If you're new to this channel, my name is Scott Merrill. I've been in IT for nearly 35 years, and what we do on this channel is Windows tips, tricks, reviews, troubleshooting, and more. On this channel, we cover the what, the why, and then the how. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, definitely check out my video library because I got a ton of content that you might be interested in. Additionally, one of the things that I love doing is helping people find the right computer for their budget. There's a link in the video description. If you fill that out, I will laser focus and find you exactly the machine you're looking for to meet your budget. It's 100% free. I'm happy to do it. Now, before we get started, I want to thank Gary for the book from my Amazon wish list. I've been really excited to read it. So regardless of how old your computer is, you're going to have what's known as a hard drive inside. It'll look like this, or maybe even newer technology. But all that hard drive does is store files. Now that drive can be divided up into multiple pieces for different purposes. Those pieces are called partitions. So think hardware versus organization. It's one solid drive, but if you choose, you can divide it up for various purposes. Here's an analogy that may make more sense to you. Imagine that your hard drive is your house. Now, partitions are the rooms in that house. Your bedrooms, your kitchen, your living room, your office, any of those storage spaces in there are basically like a hard drive partition. So as an example, you can see here, this bedroom, this bedroom, this bedroom, 3 separate bedrooms in the same entire structure. But this could be made into one large room, and whether you choose a small partition like this or you make a large partition, you are still taking a section of that house, or in this case your drive, and dedicating it for a specific thing. Some of these rooms are visible and used every day, and some rooms are hidden but absolutely essential, like that door underneath your stairs that you use to store your junk. Now, every time Windows is installed on a computer, it's going to create your primary partition here, but it's also going to create multiple partitions for Windows boot files and things like that. They aren't labeled, but they are there so that Windows can load properly. And sometimes you'll also have a recovery partition, which is also hidden, but we'll cover that in a bit. Now here's a real world example for you to see. In this case, on my computer, I have a bunch of drives in here, but also have a bunch of separate partitions, and I use them for dedicated things. For example, this drive right here, and this drive, and this drive. These 4 partitions are all one drive, but I use them separately for different things. Now, that may just be me being OCD, but that's the way I do it. If you look here under Windows Disk Management, you'll see one 4 terabyte drive, and here are the different partitions attached to that drive. I've given them each a drive letter for different things. In this case, Windows and all the programs I use are on the C drive. I have my personal files stored on the D drive. I use this drive for storing virtual machines, and this drive for just junk that I don't really care about. And I know some of you in the comments are going to say, a partition is not a drive. Quit calling your partition a drive. Sorry, that's just the way I do it. So if I refer to a partition as a drive, it's because it has a drive letter. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is a partition. The only thing that's technically a drive is the storage device, whether it has 1 partition or 4. Have you found yourself stuck with an unactivated or possibly illegal copy of Windows? Well, thanks to today's sponsor, KeysFam, you can be up and running and 100% legal again in about 10 minutes. An unactivated copy of Windows prevents you from personalizing your computer. You can use code AYCG52 for 52% off Microsoft Windows products, and you can use code AYCG62 for 62% off Microsoft Office products. The purchase process could not be simpler. Simply search for the version of Windows or Office that you're looking for, add it to your cart, make sure you apply your coupon code, and within 10 minutes you'll have an email sent to you with a new product code. Go to your email, select the product key, go to Windows Activation Settings, paste your product key, click Next, then Activate, and you're done. So a question you may be asking is why use multiple partitions? Well, in my case, as I showed you earlier, I like to keep my personal files off of the primary operating system drive. That does make things a little easier. If you have to reinstall Windows for some reason, you can just safely reinstall over that C partition and not worry about it touching any of your personal files. Now, ultimately, if your hard drive dies, it doesn't matter how many partitions you have, you're going to lose your data. So it's not a backup solution. But for me personally, I like to keep my personal files off my primary drive. And I made a video about how to do that. If you're interested, I'll put it up in the corner. You can check it out. Now let's talk for a second about something that almost all modern machines have, and that is a recovery partition. If you look right here, you'll see on this main 4 terabyte drive, I've got all these different partitions, but I also have a recovery partition. That allows me to reinstall Windows as it came from the factory. It doesn't have a drive letter, it doesn't show up in Windows File Explorer, but it is there in case you ever need to reinstall Windows. You can boot to that recovery environment through that recovery partition. Now, back in the day, manufacturers used to send out CDs with every new computer, and that was basically so you could boot to this and reinstall Windows. But at some point, somebody figured out it was cheaper to preload that stuff onto the drive and not have to spend the money on making CDs. So basically, it's the same concept, it's just invisible to you. Now, another reason you might want to have a different partition on your hard drive is if you want to do what's called dual booting, and that is Windows on one partition and another operating system like Linux on the other. Now, ideally, each operating system should have its own dedicated drive, but you can create a dual boot environment with Windows and Linux running side by side. There are some known compatibility issues between Windows and Linux on the same drive, but you can do it. This is a great opportunity for you to experiment with Linux if you've heard about it, all while keeping your Windows perfectly intact so that all your stuff is exactly where it's supposed to be. And I actually did make a video recently showing you exactly how to run a dual boot Windows and Linux environment. I'll put that card up here for you if you want to check that out. Now, when it comes to partitioning a drive, there are some issues that you might run into. Specifically, when you create multiple partitions for different purposes, you might find that you overfill one partition and the other one is basically virtually empty. So when you're partitioning your drives, you need to be mindful of what is going on that drive so that you don't run out of space. Because if you don't, then you have to go into disk management and start resizing drives and shrinking volumes and expanding volumes, and it can get complicated. So the general rule of thumb is, unless you have a very specific reason to create multiple partitions for different things, it's best to generally just use your C drive, store everything on it, and make sure you back it up. And one other thing I want to point out is these partitions right here that Windows creates for you, these are system partitions. This is where all of your boot files are stored, and unless you know exactly what you're doing, you should never delete them or make any changes to them. That's part of why when you get a 1 terabyte drive and it says it has 970 gigs free, that's partially because of those hidden files, recovery partitions, things like that. So unless you know what you're doing, I would stay away from anything that's a hidden or boot partition. So to recap, your storage drive or hard disk is one physical device. Whether you use one partition or multiple partitions, it has the ability to do that, but you don't have to. Now, there are some times where in my case, it might help you stay a little more organized because I'm a little OCD. Or you could run multiple operating systems like Linux and Windows at the same time. But it does not replace backups. Don't think for a second that because you move stuff from your C drive to your D drive that it's backing up. Very similar to is if you take files off of your C drive and move them to a portable hard drive. That's not a backup. That's moving data from one place to the other. If that drive fails, you're still in trouble. It's always best to keep 2 copies of your data at any point. Now, whether you have one partition or multiple partitions on that drive, one of my favorite ways to make sure that you don't lose your data, regardless of where you store it, is to create what's known as a drive clone. What it does is it creates an exact copy of your current drive and duplicates it onto another. And this has a lot of advantages, and specifically, if this drive dies and you have a clone, you can just pull this drive out, pop this one in, and fire it up. All of your files, all of your settings, all of your configurations, all your programs, everything is exactly where you left it. Now, there's a bunch of different opinions on what is the best backup solution. That is just one that I recommend for people who really don't download a bunch of stuff and they don't really have a lot of stuff on their computer, but they don't want the hassle of having to reinstall Windows and reinstall all their programs. You can create that one drive clone, stick it in a drawer, and keep it for an emergency. Now, I did make a video showing you exactly step by step how to create a clone drive if that's something that you're interested in. I'll put that video on the screen for you right now and you can go check it out. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.